President, please be seated. The court is back in session. And before I give the floor to the lead co-lawyer for civil party, I give the floor to Judge Mark Lavange to put questions to the witness. Judge Mark Lavange, you may proceed.
I didn't quite understand. I thought that the floor was given to the co-lead lawyers, but I understood that they had finished with their examination. Did I understand you well?
Mr. President, I told during the morning session that my question is concluded. President, yes, your question is concluded and your time also expired. And it's clear that I give the floor to Judge Mark Lavange.
Thank you, Mr. President. Witness, I have a few questions to put to you, and first of all, I would like us to discuss your activities at the very beginning of the decay period. You said that before you went to work at K1, you had worked at close to the embassy, to the Chinese embassy, and if I understood you well, you were in charge of facilitating relations between DK and China. So did I understand what you said this morning correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you tell us until when you worked at the Chinese embassy? Was it during 1 month? Was it for several months? Or was it for a year? For how long were you working with the Chinese embassy?
I cannot recall it clearly. I worked there for nearly 1 year.
I also believe I understood from what you said this morning that you were in charge of welcoming certain visitors, and in particular Chinese visitors. Is that true?
Yes, I welcomed the Chinese technicians.
Did you also welcome Chinese senior officials? Aside from the technicians, were there also high-ranking people coming from China who came to visit democratic Kampuchea?
No, never.
I am going to speak out a few names, and you will tell me if these names ring a bell. Zhong Zhongkiao. Does that name ring a bell?
No, my apology. I cannot recall that name.
What about Cheng Yung Kui? Also known as Cheng Yung Ki, and who was in charge of the Dadzai cooperatives in China, and who sometimes was called Tadzai here in Cambodia. Does this name ring a bell?
I was familiar with the name Tachai.
Do you remember if Tachai came to visit DK during a tour that lasted a few weeks, during which he was accompanied by Pol Pot?
At that time, I was not close with the visits of Tajai.
Yeah.
Fine. Last name now. What about Kong Cheng? Does his name ring a bell?
No, I cannot recall this name.
Fine. You also said, and this we see in your WRI E3/462, you said that you also accompanied Pol Pot during his trips to China and to North Korea. This is at answers 13 and 18 of your WRI. Do you remember indeed having escorted Pol Pot during those trips?
Yes, I accompanied him to the two countries.
Et
So when you traveled to China, did you go there once or several times? Do you remember where you traveled to and whom you met over there?
I went about twice. I went with Pol Pot. But I did not know about the components of the Chinese delegates.
est-ce
Did you only go to Beijing or did you visit other cities inside China or work sites or cooperatives inside China?
Overall speaking, Pol Pot met with other Chinese leaderships. He did not visit any factories.
bien.
Fine. And did you attend any meetings between Pol Pot and certain Chinese leaders?
No, I did not.
Vous
You, in your WRI E3/462, you also said that you accompanied Ieng Sary to Vietnam. So, do you remember that trip? And can you tell us if this actually happened and when you went with Ieng Sary to Vietnam, if you went there?
Yes, I accompanied Ta Ieng Sary to Vietnam. It was in 1978. Probably it was in 1974. We went by ship through Stang Train.
Juste,
Just to make things a bit clearer, did you go to Vietnam with Ieng Sary before the capture of Phnom Penh or after the capture of Phnom Penh?
It was before. It was before the capture of Phnom Penh.
And do you know if later on there were delegations traveling back and forth between Cambodia and Vietnam? Were they visits? Are you aware of that?
No, I do not know.
avez-vous
Were you in charge of welcoming Western visitors? And if yes, do you remember the names of the people who came to visit Democratic Kampuchea from the West?
I never received Western delegates.
j'ai juste
I have one last question only, which regards an answer that you provided in your WRI concerning your work as a messenger. This is answer 5 of document E3/462. And you say the following at answer 5. Question: did you ever see all 4 of them? So these 4 people is Ieng Sary, Sompan, Nun Chia, and Pol Pot. So did you see the 4 of them meeting together at that house, K1? Answer: I saw meetings of all the zone secretaries at office K1. I never saw meetings of the leadership. I saw Sao Pim from the East Zone coming to meetings frequently. I saw Kepok and Deutsch come for meetings. I often carried letters from K1 to the zones. I knew Sao Pim well. I did not know about the letters sent because they were tightly sealed. Pol Pot personally gave them to me to take to the zones, like to Kepok and Deutsch. I never accepted telegrams to be sent, just things such as liquor. So, were you indeed in charge of delivering liquor to the zones?
No, it was not about distributing liquor to the zones. In fact, it's the gifts or presents from Pol Pot.
et à qui Pol
And to whom would Pol Pot give these kinds of presents? To whom did you give these gifts?
To the East Zone.
Donc Pol Pot
So Pol Pot would send gifts to Sao Pim. Is that what I must understand?
Yes, to Sao Pim.
what can you tell us about the relations between Pol Pot and Sao Pom? Were they on very friendly terms? Were they very close to each other?
ជាការពិតនោះគាត់ចិត្ត
In fact, both of them were close to each other. Sao Pom had a rash on his skin, and it was itchy. And I can confirm that both of them were close to each other.
Est-ce que vous avez...
Did you note that if they started being on bad terms at a point in time?
រឿងនេះខ្ញុំមិនដឹងទេតែការផ្ទៃក្នុង
I was not aware of his internal affairs.
Fine. Thank you very much, witness, for these clarifications. I have no further questions.
គឺថាវិការពីក្តី
President, now I give the floor to the Defense Counsel for Nuon Chea to put questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I'm Nuon Chea's International Counsel, and I would like to ask you some questions today. Let me start by following up something that you were asked this morning by the prosecution, and that was when you joined the revolution. You said, I believe, 1970. Is it possible that that was a bit earlier than 1970?
I joined the Vietnamese army in 1970.
I understand, but did you join the revolution earlier than you joined the Vietnamese army?
Before the coup, I was in the secret insurgency movement, and in 1970 I joined the Vietnamese army.
Were you ever arrested or sentenced to a prison term before 1970? In other words, arrested by the police in the Sihanouk regime?
Yes, I was jailed. I was jailed for 20 years.
And how long did you serve your sentence? How long of a period were you actually in jail before 1970?
I was in the prison. I was in the prison for 2 years, and then I was released.
Were you and your brother close in terms of personal relations with Pol Pot before 1970?
Mình
Talking about my relationship with Pol Pot in 1970, we had no relationships at that time.
Did Pol Pot at one point in time ask you to become a photographer?
và
Yes,
And when
No.
was
ខ្ញុំជាជាងថត
I was a photographer. I received the photography training skill since I was in the jungle.
when did Pol Pot ask you to become a photographer? Was that in the 70s, after you left the Vietnamese army?
ខ្ញុំបានចេញពី
After I left the Vietnamese army, I went to the jungle and I took the opportunity there to learn photography.
នៅក្នុងព្រៃ
It was in the jungle.
How long did you train to become a photographer? How long was your training in the jungle?
ខ្ញុំរៀននៅព្រៃ
I learned in the jungle for about 1 month. At that time, we did not have any adequate equipment yet.
At one point in time, did you also go to China to develop your photography and or filming skills?
ទៅរៀននៅ
Yes, I pursued my study in China for a while.
And when were you in China to study photography?
ទៅរៀនពេលនោះ
It was in 1977 that I went to study in China.
So you went to China to study photography while you were at K1, or was it before you were at K1?
ទៅរៀនពេល
At that time, I was still in office K1.
Did Pol Pot ask you to make photos of him or photos of foreign delegations, for instance, Chinese delegations that were visiting Democratic Cambodia?
ភាគច្រើនការ
Most of the time, I took photos when Chinese delegates or visitors came to meet Pol Pot. I personally took the photographs of them.
Maybe I'm not 100% sure, Mr. Witness, but maybe I have a photo of you taken during a visit of a high-ranking Chinese leader. Mr. President, with your leave, I would like to show a photo to the witness. I will also, with your leave, like to put it on the screen. It is photo E3/3258. There's only one year N, which is P from photo 004-16558.
បាទអង្គជំរាប
President, the chamber grants your request, and AV unit officers please show the photos on the screen.